In the courtroom, my kids claimed I wasn't capable of managing my inheritance. They wanted my bank account, my car, even the condo I paid off all by myself. Their lawyer was smiling, confident, as if it was a done deal, until the judge read the list of my assets. He turned pale and jumped up. "Stop this right now. Call security." The air in that courtroom smelled like dusty legal pads and fear. My fear, or so they thought. I sat in that worn wooden chair, hands resting in my lap, feeling the chill of the seat seeping through my gray wool skirt. 68 years I had been on this earth, and I never imagined I would end up here, in a courtroom, standing before a judge, being put on trial by my own children. Mason was on my right, 42 years old, with the same wavy hair as his father, but none of his decency. He wore a navy blue suit, way too sharp for a guy who barely paid his rent on time. Next to him, Chloe, 39 years old, my only daughter. Wearing that flawless makeup, she always used to hide what she didn't want the world to see. She was in a somber black dress, like she was already in mourning. Mourning me, the mother who was still breathing right in front of her. And between them, coiled like a snake, was their attorney, Mr. Vance. His brown suit caught the glare of the fluorescent lights, and that smirk on his face. God, that smirk made my stomach turn. It was the smile of a guy who thought he had already hit a home run. "Your Honor," he started, using that pompous voice that made my teeth grind. "Mrs. Eleanor Davis is showing obvious signs of cognitive decline. She cannot manage her finances. She forgets important dates. She gets confused during conversations. Her own children are here today, deeply concerned, because they love her and want to protect her. Protect her." That word pierced through me like a rusty nail. I looked at Mason. He couldn't meet my eyes. His gaze dropped to the floor, staring hard at his freshly polished shoes. Chloe did look at me, but only for a split second. I saw something in her eyes. Guilt? Regret? I do not know, but I do know she looked away just as fast. Mr. Vance pulled out a manila folder. Paperwork. Always the damn paperwork people use to ruin lives. "We have proof, Your Honor. Unpaid utility bills, missed doctor's appointments, testimonies from neighbors who have noticed erratic behavior." He took a dramatic pause. "Mrs. Davis has a checking account with $35,000, a 2018 Honda Civic, and a 900-square-foot condo in Logan Square. Assets she could easily lose if someone takes advantage of her. Condition. Condition. Like I was some kind of disease. Like my 68 years had turned me into broken furniture that needed to be shoved in a closet." Judge Harrison Miller, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and thick-rimmed glasses, reviewed the documents with a stern face. I had done my homework on him. He had a reputation for being a fair shooter, but he had zero patience for cases that wasted his time. If this story is hooking you as much as it hooked me living it, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you do not miss any real-life stories like this one. Because what is coming next, nobody saw coming. Mason asked to speak. He cleared his throat with that same nervous tick he had since he was a little boy lying about who broke the porcelain vase in the living room. "Your Honor, we just want what is best for Mom. She is our mother. It breaks our hearts to see her like this. She needs help. She needs someone to make the big decisions for her before things go south." Chloe nodded beside him, perfectly timed tears rolling down her cheeks. What an act. If she had put that kind of effort into visiting me more than twice a year, maybe today we would be having a Sunday pot roast in my dining room instead of sitting in this grotesque circus. Judge Miller looked straight at me. "Mrs. Davis, do you have anything to say?" My attorney, Gregory Mitchell, a 60-year-old man with 3 decades of experience in family law, gently touched my shoulder. I nodded. I stood up. My knees popped a little, sure, but my voice came out strong, clear, without a single shake. "Your Honor, I have a lot to say. But first, I believe you should open that sealed envelope my attorney handed in 3 days ago, the one sitting right there, under your docket." The judge furrowed his brow. He shuffled through his stack. He found it. A manila envelope heavily stamped by a notary public. Vance tensed up. I saw his posture stiffen. Mason and Chloe exchanged confused looks. I sat back down, folded my hands, and waited. because what was about to happen would change the game entirely. And they, my own children, my own flesh and blood traitors, had absolutely no idea who they were messing with. The judge broke the seal. He opened the envelope slowly, pulled out the documents, and began reading in silence. I watched his eyes dart back and forth, moving faster and faster. His expression shifted. But before we get to the fireworks, you need to understand how I ended up in this chair. You need to know the woman I used to be, and the one I became when everyone stopped paying attention to me. 15 years ago, on an August afternoon that smelled like fresh summer rain, my husband Arthur died of a massive heart attack. He was 57. I was 53. We had been married for 31 years. I found him in the living room recliner, the daily newspaper still in his hands and his half-empty mug of black drip coffee on the pine end table. It was still steaming. His face was peaceful, like he had just dozed off watching the evening news. But he was not asleep. I screamed his name until my throat felt like sandpaper. The neighbors called 911. Mason showed up 2 hours later, Chloe the next day. At the funeral, my son hugged me and said, "Do not worry, Mom. We will take care of you." Those words sounded beautiful back then. It took me months to figure out they were completely empty. Arthur left me the condo, fully paid off, a life insurance policy worth $50,000, and a tiny fabric and craft store on the south side that barely made ends meet. I sold thread, buttons, cheap polyester blends, nothing special, nothing that would turn any heads. For the first year, my kids visited me maybe every couple of months. "How are you holding up, Mom? Do you need anything?" I would say no, that I was doing just fine, and they would leave, feeling totally off the hook, heading back to their busy lives and their very important problems. Mason was 27 at the time. He was trying to get an auto repair shop off the ground. Chloe was 24. She worked at a call center and dreamed of being a corporate manager someday. They were building their lives, the American dream, exactly how it is supposed to go, just like I did at their age. I did not blame them for drifting away. That is just how the world works. Kids grow up, leave the nest, and us moms are left staring at the empty bedrooms. What they did not know was that the empty nest was suffocating me. The nights were the absolute worst. The dead silence of the condo crushed my chest. I cooked for 2 out of pure habit and ended up throwing half the food in the trash. I kept the last shirt Arthur wore before he passed away, a red and black flannel that smelled like his sweet pipe tobacco and old-school aftershave. I packed it in a cedar chest along with his wedding band and a picture of us down in Miami Beach, young and tan, back when life was full of promises. Some days I would sit on the bedroom floor hugging that chest, crying until my ribs ached, asking God why he left me here, all alone, at 53 years old, with no purpose, no direction, no. But one morning, 6 months after the funeral, I took a hard look in the mirror. I saw a woman with deep, dark circles, messy, graying hair, wearing a faded floral bathrobe. And I felt sick. Sick of myself. Is this it? I asked myself out loud. Are you just going to wither away here, waiting for your kids to remember you exist? Waiting for someone to pat you on the head and tell you that you are still useful? That was the day I made a choice. If they did not need me, I did not need them either. I would learn to walk alone, run alone, fly alone, even if my wings ached. I took the $50,000 from the life insurance and poured every single penny into the fabric store. I flew out to New York. I hunted down completely different suppliers. I found an importer who sold me Egyptian cottons, Thai silks, Irish linens, high-end textiles that no other shop in my zip code carried. I gutted the store, painted the walls a creamy ivory, put in warm, flattering lighting, color-coordinated the fabrics so it looked like a rainbow. I set fair prices, but I was not giving anything away for free. Quality over quantity. Those first 3 months were brutal. I barely made a sale. I doubted myself. I cried in the back stockroom, biting down on my knuckles so no one would hear me. But then she walked in. Zoe, a 25-year-old fashion student looking for specialty fabrics for her senior runway collection. She had a purple pixie cut and hazel eyes full of wild dreams. She spent 2 hours touching every single bolt, picturing gowns that did not even exist yet. She bought 8 yards of teal silk and told me, This fabric is gorgeous. If my show is a hit, I am coming back. Her show was a massive hit. Her designs were featured in a trendy downtown indie magazine. And Zoe did come back, over and over again. And she brought other young designers with her. Within 2 years, my little shop had transformed into a high-end textile boutique. 5 years later, I opened a second location on the Magnificent Mile. My revenue tripled. And my kids? Still swinging by, twice a year. On my birthday, they would ask, "Are you doing okay for money, Mom?" I would smile and say, "I have enough to cover my bills. Do not worry about me." I never mentioned the 2 boutiques. I never bragged, because deep down in my gut, I knew. I knew that money changes people, and I had zero desire to find out if it would change my children. But 3 years ago, Mason showed up at my door looking desperate. He needed $30,000 to bail out his auto shop. "It is just a loan, Mom. I will pay you back in 6 months. I swear on my life." I wrote him the check. 6 months went by, a year, 2 years. He never brought up the debt again. That is when I learned a very painful lesson. For some folks, your generosity is not seen as love, it is seen as a weakness. And now, sitting in that courtroom, watching Judge Miller read my asset inventory, I asked myself, how did I not see this coming? How did I not realize my own kids? But you will see it too. You will see exactly what I built while they were busy looking the other way. While the judge kept flipping through those pages, his face getting tighter by the second, I flashed back to every single step that brought me to this exact moment. Every choice, every sacrifice, every time I chose silence over spilling the truth. The fabric boutiques were just the launching pad. At 57, an age where most women are thinking about claiming Social Security, I was teaching myself commercial real estate investing. I sat in closing offices where I was the only older woman in the room. I swallowed the condescending looks from guys in suits who would ask me, "Are you here by yourself, ma'am? Did you not bring your son along to help you run the numbers?" "I can read a balance sheet just fine, thank you very much," I would snap back. And I signed the deeds with my own 2 hands. I bought my first commercial storefront in Wicker Park using the profits from the boutiques. A 400-square-foot space that I leased to an artisanal coffee roaster, $4,000 a month. Cash flow that hit my account right on the 5th of every single month, like clockwork. 2 years later, I bought another spot, a bigger one, in the West Loop. Leased it to a farm-to-table organic restaurant, $4,500 a month. And then a third one in Lincoln Park, right on a prime corner. A natural wellness shop paid me $6,000 a month for that footprint. $14,500 of completely passive income rolling in every 30 days, on top of what the boutiques were pulling in. I lived the exact same way I always did, in my same 900-square-foot condo in Logan Square, with the same hand-me-down furniture from the 90s, driving the same 2018 Honda Civic I bought pre-owned. I ate a blueberry muffin with my morning coffee, watched Jeopardy in the evenings, and watered the geraniums on my windowsill. On the outside, nothing shifted. On the inside, everything did. Because with every passing month, with every single dollar I saved and invested, I felt a sensation I had not felt in decades. Power. Not the kind of power you use to step on people. The power of having choices. The power to say no. The power of never having to rely on a single soul. Did my kids have a clue? Not a chance. Mason still popped in on Christmas Eve holding a cheap bottle of supermarket wine and giving me a rushed hug. "How is my favorite lady doing? Everything all right at the shop?" I would nod. "Everything is fine, honey." And he would bolt out the door early because Tiffany, his new girlfriend, was waiting for him at her parents' house in the suburbs. Chloe would call me once a month. 10-minute catch-ups. "How are things, Mom?" "I am slammed right now. You know how crazy corporate gets." I would just listen. "Take care of yourself, sweetie." And we would hang up. Neither of them ever asked for details. Neither of them actually gave a damn how I was really doing. And me? I stopped waiting for them to care. At 62, I pulled a move I never thought I had in me. I bought a duplex in Lincoln Park. It was a fixer-upper, needed to be gutted to the studs. I dropped $60,000 into each unit. Hardwood floors, subway tile bathrooms, Stainless steel appliances, fresh paint. I rented them out fully furnished. One side to a couple of visiting college professors for $2,500 a month. The other to a grad student for $2,000 a month. I also became an angel investor for Zoe's brand. She had blown up. She needed capital to scale her label. I pitched a partnership. I put up the cash. She brought the creative genius. A 40-60 split in her favor. Fair and square. Over 5 years, that one investment netted me $800,000. And then, 4 years ago, I got a phone call that flipped the board entirely. My mother passed away back in Milwaukee. She was 91. The last time I visited her, 3 months prior, she grabbed my hand with her frail fingers and whispered, "Eleanor, you were always the tough one. That is why I am leaving you your father's acreage. Your brothers already blew through their share. You earned this." The land was a huge plot just outside of Austin, Texas. 3/4 of an acre right in the middle of a massive tech development boom, appraised at $1,200,000. My mom had sat on it for 30 years, waiting for the market to pop. That time was now. I sat on it too. I did not sell. Because that land was not just a check to me, it was a final blessing from my mother. Her way of saying, "I see you, baby. I saw you hustle. I saw you pick yourself up when the whole world bet against you." Mason went to the funeral. On the drive back, he casually asked, "Did Grandma leave you anything in the will?" I looked out the window. "Just some old photo albums, sweetie. Nothing crazy." I lied straight to his face. And I did not feel an ounce of guilt. Because when your kids only show up when they smell an inheritance, when their phone calls suddenly double the second you mention the words bank or real estate, when their hugs feel more like an appraisal than affection, you learn real fast that keeping your mouth shut is the best bulletproof vest you can wear. 2 years ago, for my 66th birthday, I invited both of them over. I cooked a Thanksgiving-style turkey dinner that took me 6 hours to roast, mashed potatoes from scratch, and homemade gravy. I set the table with the good china and the lace tablecloth my mom gave me for my wedding. Mason was an hour late. Tiffany was trailing right behind him. Chloe was 2 hours late. The Kennedy Expressway was a parking lot. Mom, you know how it is. They wolfed down the food. They talked non-stop about their own lives, their stress, their credit card bills. Neither of them asked about mine. Neither of them noticed the new gray streaks in my hair. Neither of them realized I had dropped 10 pounds because eating dinner alone every night kills your appetite. They bounced before I even sliced the pie. That night, sitting alone in my quiet living room, staring at a perfectly untouched cherry pie, I made a very cold, calculated choice. If they ever tried to come for what I built, they were going to find out that the woman they underestimated for 15 years had finally learned how to bite back. And now, sitting in this courtroom, watching Judge Miller's face shift from annoyed to absolutely floored, I knew the time had come. What they failed to realize is that the most dangerous threats do not come from your sworn enemies. They come from the family members who treat you like a joke. Tiffany married into our family 4 years ago, blowing in like a cloud of overpriced perfume and calculated smiles. Mason met her on a dating app. She was 35. She called herself a lifestyle influencer, boasting 20,000 followers who swiped up on her recommendations for luxury goods she could not even afford herself. She posted selfies at 5-star steakhouses where she only ordered tap water and a side salad, at high-end boutiques where she never swiped a card, and at fancy gyms where her membership had lapsed months ago. She was stunning. I will give her that. Flawless balayage blonde hair, manicures that never chipped, and a wardrobe that screamed, "Look at me." But her eyes were like 2 glass beads. Shiny, sure, but completely hollow inside. The very first time she walked into my condo, she scanned the place like a pawnshop broker. She touched my faded drapes, judged my vintage sofa, glanced at my tiny galley kitchen, and gave me this pitying smile. A smile that basically said, "Aw, look at the poor old lady. She has absolutely nothing." Mason was practically drooling over her. He looked at her like she was the second coming. "Is she not amazing, Mom?" "Tiffany is just so modern, so driven." I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and put out some homemade oatmeal cookies. Tiffany waved them off. "Oh, no thanks, mother-in-law. I am watching my carbs, you know how it is. But out of the corner of my eye, I caught her snapping a photo of my outdated living room, probably to text to her group chat for a good laugh. They tied the knot 6 months later. A cheap reception at a local banquet hall. I wrote them a check for $10,000 as a wedding gift. Tiffany smiled and said thank you so much, but her eyes clearly read, "Is this all?" For the first few months, Tiffany played the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. She called me Mama, brought me cheap grocery store bouquets, and posted selfies with me, captioned, blessed number, family first. But I could feel the slime underneath the surface, like when you flip over a rock and watch the bugs scatter into the dirt. The dynamic shifted 2 years ago. I had to run to the notary's office to update the deed on one of my commercial spaces. Tiffany insisted on tagging along, playing the supportive daughter-in-law routine. I tried to tell her no, but Mason pushed it. "Just let her go with you, Mom. She wants to bond." While I was at the desk signing the paperwork, Tiffany was hovering. I saw her eyes lock onto the documents spread out on the desk. I watched her pupils dilate, heard her breath hitch, and noticed her fake rummaging through her tote bag just to stand closer to the desk for a few extra seconds. A few days later, Mason started dropping by with weird questions. "Hey Mom, is it true you have rental properties?" Tiffany said she saw some strange paperwork at the notary. I looked him dead in the eye. "Those were just some ancient tax forms from the old fabric shop, honey. Nothing to worry about." I lied. And the sheer relief washing over his face proved I made the right call. But Tiffany was like a dog with a bone. She started her whisper campaign, dripping poison into my son's ear, drop by drop. "Mason, babe, your mom is living all alone. Don't you think a woman her age should be taking it easy? Working at that old shop cannot be good for her health." Then it got darker. "I have noticed she is slipping." I asked her about a conversation we had last week, and she totally blanked. Lies. My memory was sharp as a tack. But if you repeat a lie enough times, people start believing it. Mason started looking at me differently. With pity. With this exaggerated, patronizing concern. "Mom, did you eat lunch today? Did you take your pills? Did you remember to pay the electric bill?" I was eating 3 square meals a day and walking 2 miles around the park every morning. But in Tiffany's narrative, I was a fragile senior citizen 1 step away from a nursing home. Chloe jumped right on the bandwagon. She had a mountain of her own problems. Credit card debt sitting at $75,000. A closet full of impulse buy designer clothes with the tags still on. Racking up bar tabs downtown just to impress fake friends who only stuck around when she was buying the rounds. One afternoon, the 2 women ended up in my living room. They thought I was in the bedroom. I heard every single word. "Chloe, I am telling you, your mom is sitting on a gold mine," Tiffany whispered rapidly, buzzing with adrenaline. "I saw the deeds. She owns real estate, big accounts. Doesn't it freak you out that she is hiding this from us? What if someone is taking advantage of her? Some creepy neighbor? A scammy lawyer?" Chloe hesitated. I heard the dead air. Then she cracked. "You are right. We need to step in and protect her. Before someone bleeds her dry. Protect her. There is that word again. Using protection as a mask for plunder." Tiffany had planted the perfect seed. "Mason, your mom is a target right now. At her age, she could sign her life away and not even realize it. She could lose everything. You guys need to get legal power of attorney. For my own good, and my son, my Mason, the little boy I rocked to sleep through fevers, the kid I held during his worst nightmares, the boy I shielded from the playground bullies. That son sold me out. He chose to believe his wife over his own mother, because Tiffany had locked onto his biggest flaw. Mason was always weak-willed. He always needed someone to drive the car for him. First it was me, then it was her, and she decided to drive right over me. One afternoon, over a cup of tea in my living room, Tiffany dropped the bomb. "Mama, Mason and I are just so worried about you. You have been so forgetful lately. We really think you should see a specialist. Just a checkup to make sure your brain is doing okay." I gripped my mug, my hands completely steady. I looked straight into those glass bead eyes. "Tiffany, my mind is a steel trap, but thank you so much for your concern." Her fake smile froze. For a split second, The mask slipped, and I saw the pure venom. Then she plastered it back on. "Of course, Mama. We just want you safe." What they did not know was that I was doing my own prep work. I was recording phone calls. I was saving text messages. I documented every unannounced pop-in, every invasive question, every single stunt they pulled to make me look like I was losing my marbles. Because if building an empire out of nothing teaches you anything, it is this. Never underestimate the people trying to take you down, even if they share your DNA. The visits jumped from twice a year to twice a week. Mason, Chloe, Tiffany. A united front, constantly hovering, constantly probing. "Did you eat breakfast, Mom? Did you take your meds? Did you remember to lock the deadbolt when you came back inside?" Questions that sounded sweet on the surface, but carried a heavy, toxic undertone. "You are incompetent. You need a babysitter. You are a burden." Tiffany brought over a spiral notebook. "Here you go, Mama. Let's get you organized. I want you to write down every pill you take. What time did you take it? What is it for?" She handed me a pen like I was a kindergartner learning my ABCs. I took the notebook, smiled at her, and tossed it into a junk drawer where I knew it would never see the light of day, but they kept pressing. One Tuesday afternoon, the trio ambushed me. I was in the kitchen, browning ground beef for chili, the smell of garlic and onions filling the room. Tiffany marched straight to my fridge and yanked the door open. "Yikes, Mama. How long has this milk been sitting here? It smells super funky." She grabbed the gallon. I had just bought it 2 days ago. The expiration date was weeks away, but she poured it down the sink anyway. Better safe than sorry, right? We cannot have you getting food poisoning. She literally poured my groceries down the drain in my own kitchen. Chloe was going through my pill organizer on the counter. "Mom, there are loose pills in here. Do you even know what these are?" I knew exactly what they were. 850 milligrams of metformin, one with breakfast, one with dinner. 20 milligrams of atorvastatin for cholesterol, right before bed. But before I could even get a word out, Chloe was shaking her head, doing her best concerned daughter routine. "Mason, look at this. It is a total mess." They were treating me like a hostile witness in my own home. The breaking point hit on a Thursday in May. I was walking back from the grocery store with milk, bread, eggs, and ground beef. When I got to my building, the three of them were standing on the stoop. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, called us. She said you were wandering the halls this morning looking totally lost." A flat-out lie. Mrs. Higgins had been my friend for 2 decades. She would never say that. But it turns out Tiffany had slipped her $500 in cash to tell them I was confused, talking to the walls, leaving my door wide open. Mrs. Higgins was desperate for cash to pay for her blood pressure meds, and Tiffany sniffed that out like a bloodhound. They hauled me to a doctor, not my regular physician, a doctor they hand-picked, Dr. Sterling, a geriatric specialist with a swanky office on the Magnificent Mile, leather sofas, expensive art, soothing elevator music, the kind of waiting room designed to make you feel tiny and helpless. The doctor ran through the standard checklist. "What day of the week is it? What year are we in? What did you have for breakfast?" I nailed every single question. Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. I had oatmeal with apples and walnuts. But when the exam was over, Tiffany asked to speak to the doctor privately for 5 minutes. 5 minutes that bought me a bogus diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. Through the crack in the door, I saw Tiffany slide an envelope of cash across the mahogany desk, flashing that plastic smile. She bought my fake dementia diagnosis like she was picking up a latte at Starbucks. The disrespect ramped up. Tiffany took her campaign to social media. She posted selfies of us walking out of the clinic, captioning it, "Taking care of my sweet mother-in-law today. Her memory is fading, but our love isn't. Number, family first, number, caregiver life number, dementia awareness." 322 likes, comments pouring in from her clueless followers. "You are such an angel, Tiffany. She is so lucky to have you. I wish my daughter-in-law was this amazing." She was leveraging my illness for clout. One afternoon, the three of them, Tiffany, Chloe, and some distant cousin, were chatting in my living room. I needed a minute to breathe, so I slipped into my bedroom. I opened the cedar chest and pulled out Arthur's old flannel shirt. I pressed it against my face, took a deep breath. I just wanted to smell his pipe tobacco, even though it was practically gone after 15 years. I cried. Silently. Just like I had cried 1,000 times since my kids decided I was a problem they needed to manage. Tiffany pushed the door open without knocking. She caught me holding the shirt, tears running down my face. She did not say a word. She just pulled out her iPhone, snapped a picture, and backed out. Half an hour later, I heard her voice drifting from the living room. Do you see what I mean? She was in there crying over an old shirt, talking to the air like her dead husband was standing right there. She is stuck in the past. She is losing it. My grief had just been weaponized into proof of my insanity. Mason walked into my bedroom a minute later. I saw the guilt eating at him, but it was overshadowed by Tiffany's toxic influence. Mom, I really think you need full-time help, more than we thought. That night, laying alone in the dark, I let myself shatter. I sobbed until my throat was raw. I punched my mattress. I screamed into my pillow so the neighbors would not call the cops. I begged Arthur, wherever he was, to tell me why he left me alone to deal with this nightmare. But the next morning, I threw off the covers. I splashed cold water on my face. I brushed my hair back tight. I put on my favorite gray wool skirt and a crisp white blouse. And I called attorney Gregory Mitchell, the most ruthless family law attorney in Chicago. Because if they wanted a war, I was going to give them a bloodbath. But they were about to find out that I learned how to fight dirty a long time ago. The summons arrived on a Monday morning, sent via private process server, stamped by the family court. I sliced the envelope open. My hands did not shake once, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. I read every line, every legal threat dressed up as concern. Petition for guardianship and conservatorship due to severe cognitive decline, posing an immediate risk to the respondent's physical well-being and financial estate. Petitioners: Mason Davis and Chloe Davis. I sat down at the kitchen table, the exact same table where I drank coffee with Arthur for 31 years. The exact same table where I cut my kids' birthday cakes when they were toddlers. The exact same table where I was now reading how those children wanted to strip away my basic human rights. I flipped to the exhibits. There was a thumb drive with videos, secretly recorded clips Tiffany had been hoarding for months. In one of them, I was allegedly disoriented in the grocery aisle, staring blankly at the shelves. I knew exactly what that day was. I was doing mental math, comparing the price per ounce between two brands of olive oil. Totally normal, everyday life. But she edited the footage to make me look like an Alzheimer's patient. There were letters. One from Dr. Sterling, confirming a progressive cognitive decline. Another from Mrs. Higgins, claiming she saw me wandering the halls and talking to myself. Testimonies bought with cash by people who cared more about paying rent than their own integrity. Tiffany submitted a sworn affidavit. My mother-in-law confessed to me that a strange man visits her and makes her sign legal documents she does not understand. I fear she is the victim of elder abuse. Lies. Complete, fabricated garbage. They were asking the judge for total legal control over my person and my estate. Complete access to my bank accounts, my real estate, my medical directives. They wanted to turn me into a piece of furniture in my own home. For 3 days, I could not eat. I barely slept. I just stared at the ceiling fan, trying to pinpoint the exact moment I lost my children. Was it when Arthur died and I let them live their own lives? Was it because I hid my success from them because I was terrified it would turn them greedy? Or were they always rotten inside, and I was just too blinded by a mother's love to see the truth? On the 4th day, I found a photograph, my wedding day. I was 22 years old, wearing a simple white dress, holding a bouquet of daisies, smiling so bright the picture almost glowed. Arthur was standing next to me, 25, wearing a rented tux, his eyes full of promises that he kept until the day his heart stopped. That 22-year-old girl had no idea she was going to be a widow. She had no idea she was going to build a multi-million-dollar empire from scratch. She had no idea her own flesh and blood would stab her in the back. But that girl was a fighter, and I was still her. I got up. I took a hot shower. I put on my best burgundy wrap dress, and I went to see attorney Gregory Mitchell. His office was in a high-rise in the Loop with a view of Millennium Park. Mr. Mitchell was 60 years old, with snow-white hair, an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, and eyes that had witnessed thousands of family betrayals. "Mrs. Davis," he said after reviewing the stack of paperwork, "this is a textbook case of litigation fraud. But I am not going to sugarcoat this. These conservatorship battles are incredibly difficult to win if we do not walk in there with a smoking gun." "I have your smoking gun right here," I said, sliding my iPhone across his desk. I played him my own secret recordings. Audio of Tiffany heavily pressuring me to sign over my banking rights. Text messages where Mason asked Tiffany, "How much cash do you think she actually has?" I handed over 5 years of flawless bank statements, showing every bill paid early, every investment carefully managed, every real estate transaction perfectly documented. "We need our own medical experts," Mitchell said. "Independent specialists who will tear that bogus diagnosis to shreds." Over the next 2 weeks, I was poked and prodded by 3 top-tier doctors. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a board-certified neurologist with 32 years in the field. She ran me through an absolute gauntlet of cognitive tests. Result: brain function in the top percentile for my age bracket. Flawless memory retention. 0 markers for dementia. Dr. James Montgomery, a highly respected geriatrician. A full physical workup, motor skills testing, competency evaluation. Result: patient is highly lucid, fully oriented, and completely capable of independent decision-making. Dr. Sarah Jenkins, a forensic psychiatrist. 3 intense psychological profiling sessions. Result: no cognitive decline whatsoever. High emotional intelligence, pristine logical reasoning skills. But Mitchell did not stop there. He dug into Mason. He found out my son had forged my signature 2 months ago on a $50,000 small business loan application. The bank flagged it and denied the loan, but the paper trail was sitting right there. We hired a forensic handwriting expert who proved it was a forgery. He dug into Tiffany, jackpot. He uncovered 2 separate civil lawsuits filed against her for e-commerce fraud, one for $12,000, another for $15,000. Followers who bought her exclusive lifestyle coaching packages and never received a damn thing. Tiffany just blocked them on Instagram and vanished with the cash. He dug into Dr. Sterling, a massive bombshell. The good doctor had his medical license temporarily suspended in another state for writing fraudulent dementia diagnoses for impatient heirs trying to seize trust funds early. And then we loaded the final bullet into the chamber. I had a CPA and a notary public draw up a certified, ironclad inventory of my entire net worth. Every property deed, every brokerage account, every business equity share, every single dollar. We sealed it in a heavy manila envelope and filed it with the court clerk 3 days before the hearing. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" Mitchell asked me. "Once the judge opens this envelope, your entire net worth becomes public record in that courtroom." I looked him dead in the eye. "Counselor, my children want to humiliate me in a public courtroom. It is only fair I return the favor." The night before the hearing, I sat in my living room. I ran my hands over the cheap upholstery of the sofa Arthur and I bought on layaway. I looked at the framed photos on the wall. Mason in his Little League uniform, smiling with a missing tooth. Chloe at her high school graduation. All of us smiling in a timeline where love did not come with a price tag. I cried, one last time. I mourned the children I lost. I mourned the family that was officially dead. And the next morning, I put on my gray wool skirt, my crisp white blouse, pinned my hair into a tight French twist, and walked into that courthouse to introduce them to Eleanor Davis. The woman they thought was a pushover. The woman who built an empire while they were not looking. The woman who would never, ever drop to her knees for anybody. In that courtroom, watching Judge Miller slide his finger under the flap of that manila envelope, I remembered a piece of advice my dad gave me when I was a teenager. "A lion does not roar before it attacks, honey. It roars after the kill." I had kept my mouth shut for 15 years. Today, I was going to roar. Attorney Mitchell stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with calculated theatricality. "Your Honor, the defense requests permission to submit supplementary evidence that categorically dismantles every single allegation brought against my client." Judge Miller nodded, his eyes still glued to the papers he had just pulled from the envelope. His poker face was good, but I saw his eyebrows creeping up his forehead. Proceed, counselor. Gregory Mitchell was a master of courtroom theater. He strolled to the center of the floor, clutching a leather binder. Tiffany shifted in her seat, crossing and uncrossing her legs. Mason was staring at his shoes. Chloe was chewing on her bottom lip, that same nervous habit she had in middle school whenever she got caught lying. Your Honor, Mrs. Eleanor Davis is not only legally competent to manage her estate, she is, in fact, one of the most razor-sharp, financially sophisticated individuals I have had the pleasure of representing in my 30 years of practice. He pulled out the first document. Neurological evaluation from Dr. Evelyn Hayes, board certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. Conclusion. Cognitive function is superior to the average baseline for her demographic. Flawless memory. 0 indicators of decline. He handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Exhibit B, Mitchell continued. Geriatric evaluation from Dr. James Montgomery. Conclusion. Patient is lucid, fully oriented to time and place, and possesses total executive function. And Exhibit C, forensic psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Sarah Jenkins. Conclusion. Absolutely no evidence of cognitive impairment. Exceptional emotional intelligence. Mr. Vance, their sleazy lawyer, jumped out of his chair. Objection, Your Honor. These are paid experts hired by the defense. This is heavily biased testimony. Mitchell flashed a predatory smile. And the diagnosis from your Dr. Sterling was not solicited by the petitioners? How fascinating. He pivoted toward Vance. Was opposing counsel aware that Dr. Sterling's medical license was previously suspended in the state of Nevada for accepting bribes to issue fraudulent dementia diagnoses? Dead silence. The air in the room got sucked out. Tiffany went white as a ghost. Mason whipped his head around to stare at his wife in pure confusion. I have the medical board's disciplinary file right here, Mitchell announced, his voice booming. 3 documented cases where family members paid him cash under the table to declare healthy seniors mentally unfit. The motive? Fast-tracking conservatorships to raid their trust funds. He handed the file to the bailiff. Vance was stammering, desperately trying to stop the bleeding. Objection! This is an outrageous. Is it the truth? Mitchell cut him off like a guillotine. Yes, it is. An inconvenient truth. Then I pulled out my iPhone. My hands were rock solid. Even though my heart was beating in my throat, Mitchell hooked my phone up to the courtroom's Bluetooth audio system. Your Honor, with my client's consent, the defense will now play audio recordings legally captured by Mrs. Davis. In our state, one-party consent allows a participant to record a conversation without the other party's knowledge. He hit play. Tiffany's sugary, fake voice echoed off the courtroom walls. Mama, why don't I just take care of all this boring paperwork for you? Your bank statements, the property deeds, you just sign on the dotted line and I will handle the headache. Much easier, right? Then my voice, calm and steady. That is not necessary, Tiffany. I handle my own finances. Tiffany again, pushing harder. Oh, but at your age, aren't you terrified of making a mistake? Mason and I can manage it so much better. Mitchell skipped to the next track. This one was chillingly calculated. Tiffany talking to Mason, totally unaware my phone was recording from the kitchen counter. Mason, I am telling you, your mom is sitting on a pile of cash. I know it. I saw the deeds at the notary. We have to make a move before she loses it all, or some scammer bleeds her dry. Mason's voice, hesitating. Are you 100% sure? Tiffany, 0 hesitation. 1,000,000%. If we don't pull the trigger on this conservatorship now, we are going to hate ourselves later. Judge Miller held up a hand. Mitchell paused the audio. The judge glared at Tiffany with a look that could melt steel. Mrs. Davis. Excuse me, Mrs. Tiffany Davis. Tiffany opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in 4 years, the influencer had run out of words. But Mitchell was not even done reloading. Your Honor, it gets worse. Petitioner Mason Davis forged his mother's signature on a $50,000 commercial loan application 60 days ago. We have the forensic handwriting analysis right here. He passed the report up. I watched Mason literally sink into his chair, trying to make himself disappear. Chloe was staring at her brother in absolute horror. Furthermore, Petitioner Chloe Davis unlawfully transferred $25,000 out of a joint checking account that Mrs. Davis maintained strictly for family medical emergencies. Funds that were never replenished or acknowledged. Chloe squeezed her eyes shut, real tears this time. Not the crocodile tears from 20 minutes ago. And lastly, Mrs. Tiffany Davis, who currently has 2 pending civil lawsuits for e-commerce wire fraud, utilized her mother-in-law's fabricated medical condition to launch a GoFundMe campaign. She raised $12,000 under the guise of help pay for my mother-in-law's dementia care. She diverted every single dollar to pay off her own credit card debt. Mitchell threw a massive stack of screenshots onto the evidence table. Social media posts, bank transfer receipts, IP logs. Judge Miller took off his glasses. He pinched the bridge of his nose, taking a long, deep breath. When he put his glasses back on, his face was a thunderstorm. "Counselor Vance," the judge said, his voice dangerously quiet, "I sincerely hope you have a spectacular explanation for this circus." Vance was sweating through his cheap brown suit. His arrogant smirk was dead and buried. "Your Honor, my clients assured me that." At that moment, the judge pulled the final document out of my sealed envelope. The certified asset inventory. He started reading it, his eyes tracking line by line. His eyes moved fast, then faster. Suddenly, he stopped dead. He looked up at me. For the first time since I walked into his courtroom, he truly looked at me. And in his eyes, I saw the exact moment the bomb went off. The moment I had been waiting for. The moment my greedy children never saw coming. The moment my silence turned into a shockwave. "Counselor Vance," Judge Miller said, his voice tight like a piano wire. "Did you run a full financial discovery on Mrs. Davis's actual net worth before you filed this petition?" Vance swallowed hard. You could hear it hit his throat. "Your Honor, my clients informed me that their mother's estate consisted of a checking account with $35,000, a 2018 Honda Civic, and a condo in Logan Square. Those are the assets we are petitioning to protect." "Is that so?" the judge said. There was an edge to his tone that made the court stenographer sit up perfectly straight. "And none of you bothered to look under the hood?" Mason looked up, genuinely bewildered. "Under the hood? I do not understand, Your Honor." Judge Miller looked at the spreadsheet again, then back to me. There was a profound respect in his gaze now, a respect that was not there 30 minutes ago. "Mrs. Davis, would you please stand up?" I stood. My spine was steel. My chin was high. My hands rested calmly at my sides. "Could you please state your basic personal information for the record? Date of birth, current address, social security number." "Eleanor Margaret Davis," I stated, my voice echoing off the wood paneling. "Born March 12, 1957, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 68 years old. Current address: 249 West Logan Boulevard, Apartment 4B, Chicago, Illinois. Zip code 60647. Social security number." I rattled off the 9 digits without blinking. "Driver's license number." I nailed every letter and number flawlessly. The judge nodded. "Do you remember what you ate for breakfast this morning?" "Oatmeal with sliced apples, cinnamon, and walnuts. 1 mug of black drip coffee. 2 glasses of tap water. What is today's date?" "Thursday, June 22nd, 2025. "Can you state the dates of birth of your 2 children?" "Mason Arthur Davis. Born April 15th, 1983. Chloe Elizabeth Davis. Born September 28th, 1986. Mason closed his eyes. Why couldn't he remember my birthday? I could read the shame written all over his face. "Could you please list your current assets and their approximate market valuations for the court?" And here it was. The kill shot. Personal checking account with Chase Bank, $35,000. Brokerage and investment accounts with Vanguard, $800,000. 3 commercial real estate properties currently leased. 1 in Wicker Park, appraised at $650,000. 1 in the West Loop, appraised at $800,000. 1 in Lincoln Park, appraised at $750,000. Tiffany stopped breathing. I literally watched her chest freeze. I kept going. A 40% equity stake in Zoe Designs, LLC, valued at $800,000. a fully renovated residential duplex in Lincoln Park, currently generating rental income appraised at $1 million, and a commercial land parcel located outside of Austin, Texas, currently zoned for tech development, appraised at $1,200,000. You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. The silence was absolute. The only sound was Chloe's ragged, hyperventilating breath, and a tiny, pathetic whimper that squeaked out of Tiffany's throat. "Total estimated net worth," I said, locking eyes directly with my son and daughter, $5,835,000. Mason turned the color of sheet metal. It was like someone pulled a plug and drained every ounce of blood from his body. His knuckles were white, gripping the armrests of his chair. Tiffany's mouth was hanging wide open, but no words came out. Her glass-bead eyes finally showed real emotion, pure, unfiltered panic. Chloe was swaying back and forth in her chair, clutching her stomach like she was about to throw up on the defense table. Judge Miller stood up. His judicial calm was gone, replaced by righteous fury. "Stop this proceeding immediately." Everybody jumped. Even the armed bailiff flinched. "Counselor Vance, did you or did you not have any knowledge of the respondent's actual financial portfolio?" "No, Your Honor. My clients never. Your clients attempted to seize control of nearly $6 million using fabricated medical records." The judge was practically shouting now. "This is not a family protection petition. This is an attempted heist." He pointed a finger at the bailiff. "Lock the doors. I want a full criminal inquiry opened into N." But two court officers stepped right in front of the heavy oak double doors. The judge grabbed another document from my stack, his voice dripping with disgust. "I am looking at a certified, irrevocable trust document here, Mrs. Davis recently transferred $3,500,000, over 60% of her liquid estate, into a nonprofit foundation, providing grants to entrepreneurial widows. Signed and notarized 6 months ago." He glared down at Mason and Chloe. "Do you comprehend what that means? It means that even if you had successfully pulled off this pathetic scam, the bulk of that money was already legally untouchable. It was never going to be yours." Mason buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook violently. Chloe was openly sobbing, mascara running down her face. "Mom, I didn't know." Tiffany swore that. "Quiet," Judge Miller barked. "I do not want to hear a single excuse out of your mouth." He sat back down. He took a long breath to steady himself. When he spoke again, his voice was sub-zero. "I am ordering a comprehensive investigation by the district attorney's office. Dr. Sterling is being reported to the state medical board immediately. The witnesses who submitted these fraudulent affidavits will be subpoenaed and threatened with perjury charges. And you three," he pointed his gavel directly at Mason, Chloe, and Tiffany, "are going to sit down with a prosecutor and explain exactly what kind of criminal conspiracy you were trying to execute in my courtroom." Tiffany broke. "Your Honor, please. We were drowning in debt. The credit cards. I just thought." "So, you admit on the record that this petition was motivated by financial desperation and not concern for Mrs. Davis's health?" Tiffany realized what she had just confessed on a hot microphone. She snapped her mouth shut. But the damage was done. It was on the court transcript. Judge Miller looked down at me. The anger vanished, replaced by profound admiration. "Mrs. Davis, do you have any final words for the record?" I stood up one last time. I looked at my children. These two grown adults who used to be the babies I nursed in the middle of the night, the toddlers I held when they were scared of the dark, the teenagers I defended against the whole world. Yes, Your Honor. I want it permanently on the record that every single dollar to my name was earned by my own 2 hands. No handouts, no easy inheritance. Working 16-hour days, sacrificing, crying in stockrooms, and pulling myself off the floor every time life knocked me down. My voice did not shake. It rang like a bell. And while I was building that life, my children checked in on me twice a year. They never asked how I was actually doing. They never noticed I lost weight from depression. They completely ignored the fact that their father died 15 years ago, and I have been eating a slice of cake alone on his birthday every single year since. Mason let out a gut-wrenching sob, a broken, childish wail. "So no, Your Honor, this petition was never about protecting an old woman. It was raw greed masquerading as love. The judge nodded slowly, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. Petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, I am recommending the district attorney file charges for attempted litigation fraud and perjury. This court is adjourned. The heavy wooden gavel slammed down. Bang. And I, Eleanor Davis, walked down the center aisle of that courtroom with my head held high. Because some battles are not won by screaming and shouting. They are won with the cold, hard truth. But the story did not end with the bang of a gavel. Because when you walk out of a courthouse after utterly destroying the lives of your own family, you do not feel like a winner. You just feel empty. A massive, hollow void that swallows you whole. I pushed through the double doors. The courthouse hallway smelled like industrial floor wax and broken lives. My heels clicked against the marble tiles. Attorney Mitchell walked beside me, calmly snapping his leather briefcase shut. Mrs. Davis, we did it. A total victory. I nodded, but my chest was completely numb. Behind us, I heard frantic footsteps echoing down the hall. Mom! Mom! Please! Wait! I stopped. Something deep down inside my chest, that tiny sliver of a mother's heart that refuses to die, forced me to plant my feet. I turned around. My son's eyes were bloodshot and swollen. His tie was yanked sideways, his expensive suit wrinkled. He looked like he had aged a decade in 2 hours. Mom, I swear to God I didn't know. I didn't know you had built all of that, Tiffany told me. She swore we were just trying to protect you. Protect me? I repeated. My voice sounded weird, hollow, like it was coming from someone else. Mason, do you actually believe that garbage? Or is that just the lie you tell yourself so you can sleep at night? He stuttered. He hesitated. And in that 1 second of hesitation, I saw the ugly truth. He knew. Maybe he did not know the exact dollar amount, but he knew something was rotten. And he actively chose to back his wife's play over his own mother's sanity. Chloe caught up to him. Her mascara was smeared under her eyes, making her look like a sad, terrified raccoon. Mom, please forgive us. I am begging you. We never wanted it to go this far, we honestly thought. We thought your mind was going. Did you really? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. Or did you just figure it would be an easy payday? Did you think the stupid old lady would just smile and sign her rights away? Chloe flinched violently, like I had slapped her across the face. Tiffany stayed 20 feet back, hovering near a marble pillar. She did not dare step closer. She was cunning enough to know there was no script that could save her now. She pulled out her iPhone. Even while her life was burning down, she was probably trying to figure out how to spin this disaster for her remaining followers. Attorney Mitchell gently put a hand on my shoulder. Eleanor, you do not have to speak to them. I know, I said, but I need to. One last time. I stared at my children, the 2 human beings I pushed out of my own body, the kids I fed, educated, and loved unconditionally for over 40 years. I want you both to listen to me very carefully. Every single dollar I made because you two stopped needing me, because your lives became so important, so wrapped up in yourselves, that you completely forgot I existed. And inside that massive, empty space you left behind, I found my purpose. Mason opened his mouth to speak. I held up my hand. I am not done. The most pathetic part of this whole nightmare is not that you wanted my money. It is that not once, in 15 years, did you ever ask me how I was actually doing. You never asked if I was lonely, if I missed your dad, if I just needed someone to hug me and tell me that my life still had value. Chloe let out a choked sob. Mom, You visited me on my birthday and on Christmas. I cut her off. You ate my pot roast, which took me hours to cook because I wanted it to be perfect for you. And you bolted out the door before I even served coffee because you had better places to be. Tears finally broke loose and rolled down my cheeks. But my voice did not waver. The day your father died, Mason, you showed up 2 hours after I called you. Do you want to know what I did for those 2 hours? I sat on the floor next to his dead body, holding his cold hand, talking to him, begging him to wake up. Alone. Completely alone. And when you finally walked through the door, the very first thing you asked me was if I had any coffee brewed. Mason shattered. His legs gave out. He slid down the marble wall and collapsed onto the floor, pulling his knees to his chest. I am sorry. Oh God, Mom, I am so sorry. And you, Chloe. I turned my crosshairs on her. 3 years ago, on your birthday, I wired you $20,000 because you were crying on the phone about being underwater on your bills. Do you remember that? 3 weeks later, you posted pictures of yourself drinking margaritas at a luxury resort in Miami, using the bailout money you swore you needed for rent. Chloe covered her face with both hands, weeping uncontrollably. I was an idiot. I was so selfish and blind and… You were kids, I said plainly. Kids who forgot that your parents are actual human beings, that we bleed, that we hurt, that we need to be loved too. A group of lawyers and clerks walked past us, staring openly at the explosive family drama unfolding in the middle of the courthouse. I did not care. You want to know the ultimate punchline? I asked, looking down at both of them. Before this whole circus started, I was leaving you everything. I had my estate plan drafted. 30% to Mason, 30% to Chloe, 40% to my women's foundation. After the charity got its cut, you two were named the sole executors. You were going to inherit almost $2 million each the day I died. Mason's head snapped up. His eyes were wide with shock. What? But you couldn't wait, could you? I spat the words out. You couldn't just love me. You couldn't just come visit me on a Sunday. You couldn't just be decent kids. You had to take it by force. You tried to destroy my life to steal money that I was already going to give you. The silence that followed was suffocating, heavy, and toxic. Finally, Tiffany spoke up from her safe distance. Her voice was small, shaky. Mrs. Davis, I am so sorry. I was drowning. The creditors were threatening to sue me. I thought. You thought the dumb old lady would be an easy mark? I finished her sentence. And you brainwashed my weak son into believing that your greed was actually love. Tiffany stared at the floor. She had zero comeback. Attorney Mitchell checked his watch. Mrs. Davis, we really need to go. We have paperwork to file with the clerk downstairs. I nodded. But before I walked away, I reached into my purse. I pulled out a plain white envelope. I held it out to Mason. What is this? He asked, taking it with trembling hands. The truth, I said. Open it when you are alone, when she is not standing over your shoulder, when you can actually think for yourself. And I walked away. I marched down that corridor and pushed through the exit doors without glancing back once. Because if I had looked back, if I had seen my son sobbing on the floor and my daughter crying against the wall, my armor would have cracked. And I had already shed enough tears for them to last a lifetime. In the back of the cab heading home, Attorney Mitchell looked over at me. What was in the envelope, Eleanor? Photographs, I said, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. Pictures of them when they were little. Mason in his Little League uniform, smiling with a missing tooth. Chloe, at her 5th grade graduation, hugging me in that pink dress she refused to take off. Why? Because they need to look at those innocent kids and remember who they used to be, before they turned into the monsters they are today. The lawyer did not say another word. He just nodded in quiet understanding. That night, in my empty apartment, I sat in the living room with the cedar chest resting on my lap. I pulled out Arthur's flannel shirt. It didn't smell like his pipe tobacco anymore, just like old wood and dust, but I hugged it tightly to my chest anyway. I did it, honey, I whispered into the empty room. I fought back. I showed them I am not weak. The silence of the condo was my only answer. I cried. I cried for the children I lost, for the family dynamic that was permanently broken, for the lazy Sunday mornings that would never happen again, with Mason helping me flip pancakes and Chloe rambling about her big dreams. But mixed in with the grief, I cried tears of pure relief. Because finally, after 68 years on this earth, I chose my own dignity over begging for scraps of love from people who only cared about me when there was a check attached. And that realization, as excruciating as it was, tasted like pure freedom. The official notice showed up in the mail 3 days later. A summons from the district attorney's office, a formal grand jury investigation into attempted litigation fraud, elder abuse, and perjury. Mason, Chloe and Tiffany were all subpoenaed to face a prosecutor. Judge Miller was not bluffing. He dropped the hammer. I was not legally required to attend the depositions, but I went anyway. Attorney Mitchell tried to talk me out of it. Eleanor, you have already won. You do not need to drag yourself through the mud again. I am not doing it for me, counselor, I told him. I am going for all the older women who get abused in the dark. The ones who do not have $5 million to hire a shark like you. The ones who get thrown into nursing homes and stripped of their life savings because their kids are greedy vultures and the system is broken. So, I went. District Attorney Marcus Thorne's office was cramped, painted a depressing institutional gray, with metal filing cabinets stacked to the ceiling. He was a sharp guy in his mid-40s, sporting a neatly trimmed mustache and the exhausted eyes of a man who had seen way too much human depravity. Mrs. Davis, he said, giving my hand a firm, respectful shake. Your case is generating a lot of heat downtown, not just because of the dollar amounts, but because of the exact playbook they used against you. The playbook? I asked. Weaponizing fake medical diagnoses to establish legal incompetence is becoming an epidemic. Greedy heirs trying to fast-track their inheritances. The tragedy is that 99% of the victims actually are vulnerable seniors who cannot fight back in court. A cold chill ran down my spine. How common is this? On paper, maybe a few dozen cases a year in Cook County. Off the record, hundreds, thousands across the country. Most of them never see the inside of a courtroom. The family gaslights the victim into thinking it is for their own good. They drain the accounts, and nobody bats an eye. I sat up a little straighter. So my case can be a battering ram. Exactly, which is why I need you to walk me through every single detail. Leave nothing out. For 2 solid hours, I laid it all out. Every subtle manipulation. Every unannounced welfare check. Every backhanded comment designed to gaslight me into thinking I was losing my mind. The DA recorded the whole thing, taking furious notes, stopping me to ask hyper-specific questions. Do you still have the original audio recordings? Every single one. Saved on my iPhone and backed up to a secure cloud server. What about the fraudulent neighbor testimonies? Mrs. Higgins already broke down and confessed that Tiffany handed her $500 in cash. Mitchell got her signed, notarized confession yesterday. D.A. Thorne let out a low whistle and smirked. You are one hell of an organized witness, Mrs. Davis. I am not a witness, I corrected him flatly. I am the victim who refused to play dead. 2 weeks later, it was Tiffany's turn in the hot seat. She showed up without Mason. She was wearing cheap sweatpants, zero makeup, and her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She was playing the role of the broken, remorseful victim to perfection. I was sitting in the waiting area when she walked past, our eyes locked. For a fraction of a second, I thought I saw genuine, soul-crushing shame. Then she looked at the floor and vanished into the prosecutor's office. Her interrogation lasted 3 grueling hours. When she finally walked out, her eyes were bloodshot but bone-dry, like she had run out of tears. Or maybe she was just physically incapable of crying for anyone but herself. She stopped in front of my chair. I braced myself for an apology, but she just stared at me with this blank, unreadable expression. Then she turned on her heel and walked out of the building. A week later, my phone rang. It was D.A. Thorne. Mrs. Davis, we kicked over a massive rock. You need to hear this. My heart kicked into overdrive. What did you find? Tiffany Davis doesn't just have 2 civil suits for e-commerce fraud. We uncovered 5 more that were never officially filed. Elderly women who bought her premium coaching packages and got totally ghosted, small amounts. 10, maybe $20,000 a pop, just under the threshold where it makes sense to hire a lawyer. I felt physically sick to my stomach. What is the total damage? Right around $143,000. 8 different victims. Every single one of them over the age of 60. Tiffany was not just a greedy daughter-in-law, she was a calculated predator. And my son had either married her having no clue, or worse, he knew and looked the other way. What about Dr. Sterling? I asked. License suspended indefinitely pending a federal probe. We flagged 7 other suspicious conservatorship cases tied to his signature. His career is a smoking crater. I felt a dark, heavy wave of satisfaction. Justice. It was messy and way too late, but it was justice. And my children? I asked softly. Thorne sighed on the other end of the line. That is where it gets muddy. Mason is singing like a canary. He handed over every text thread he ever had with Tiffany. He confessed to the forged loan application. He is checking himself into intensive therapy. His defense attorney is trying to cut a plea deal. A deal for what? Reduced charges in exchange for paying back the $50,000 loan with penalties plus court-mandated community service. And Tiffany? She is stonewalling, pleading the fifth, claiming it was all a tragic misunderstanding and she genuinely believed you had dementia. Garbage, I snapped. I know. The judge knows. But without a confession, a trial could drag on for years. I took a deep breath. What about Chloe? Your daughter is stuck in the middle. She signed the petition, yes, but the digital trail proves Tiffany was the mastermind pulling the strings. Chloe was drowning in debt and desperate for a lifeline. Her lawyer is going to argue she was heavily manipulated. Does that give her a free pass? I asked bitterly. No, but a jury might go easy on her. I sat at my kitchen table, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, weighing my options, playing chess in my head. Mr. Thorne, I said slowly, can I pitch you an alternative? I am all ears. And that is how I engineered my own brand of justice. The legal system throws people in a cell and hits them with fines. I wanted something that would actually leave a mark. I wanted them to learn a lesson that would burn into their souls. My counteroffer was brutal, but fair. Mason had to pay back the $50,000 from the forged loan, plus $20,000 in interest and punitive damages. $70,000 total. Cash he absolutely did not have. He would have to sell his assets, work overtime, and bleed for it, just like I bled for 15 years. On top of that, both he and Chloe had to log 6 months of mandatory, unpaid labor at my Foundation for Entrepreneurial Widows. Real, grueling community service. Looking highly vulnerable women in the eye and helping them build businesses from scratch. Learning what it actually takes to survive when the world writes you off. Tiffany had to write a check reimbursing every single penny of the $12,000 GoFundMe scam. And the kicker? She had to post an unfiltered, unedited confession video to her Instagram grid. No excuses. Staring into the lens and admitting to her followers that she lied, manipulated medical records, and used an elderly woman as a prop to steal money. If they hit every single benchmark within 6 months, I would formally request the DA drop the felony charges. If they slipped up once, Thorne would drop the hammer and bury them in state prison. Are you absolutely sure about this? Thorne asked. You have them dead to rights. You could send them away. Justice isn't always handcuffs, Marcus, I replied. Sometimes justice is forcing someone to stare in the mirror until they hate the reflection. The prosecutor chuckled darkly. You are one hell of a scary woman, Mrs. Davis. No, I corrected him. I am a broken mother, trying to salvage whatever is left of my kids' souls, even if they don't deserve it. That afternoon, I marched back into Mitchell's office and gutted my estate plan. 70% went straight to the foundation. $3,500,000 earmarked to help widows start LLCs, get college degrees, and never have to rely on a man for survival. 30% went into a heavily restricted trust for Mason and Chloe. But there was a catch. They could not touch a single dime of it until they turned 60 years old. And the payout was contingent on them proving, through documented community service and clean criminal records, that they had actually reformed. Tiffany was permanently blacklisted. Even if she somehow stayed married to Mason, the trust language explicitly barred her from seeing a single penny. I signed the new will in front of the notary. My hand did not shake once, because I had finally figured out the hardest lesson of all. A mother's love might be unconditional, but respect has to be earned. And an inheritance is a privilege, not a birthright. And I was officially done handing out privileges to people who treated me like dirt. It was pouring rain the day Mason showed up at my door to beg for forgiveness on his hands and knees. I was in my kitchen, brewing a fresh pot of drip coffee, when the doorbell buzzed. I checked the peephole. He was standing in the hallway, soaked to the bone, holding a manila envelope. No Tiffany in sight. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. I did not do it out of pity. I did it out of morbid curiosity. "Mom?" he choked out, his voice cracking, water dripping from his nose. "Please, just let me step inside. I need to talk to you." I stepped back and let him into the entryway. He dripped rainwater all over my hardwood floor. He did not dare take another step into the living room. "I have the money," he said, holding out the soggy envelope. "The $70,000. I sold my truck. I maxed out a personal loan. I picked up double shifts at a buddy's garage for 2 straight months. It is all in cashier's checks right here. I did not reach for it." Put it on the console table. He set it down, his hands visibly shaking. "And?" I asked, my voice freezing cold. "And? I signed the paperwork for the foundation. I start Monday. 6 months, sweeping floors and doing data entry. Exactly what you demanded. And Tiffany?" His jaw tightened. "I filed for divorce. That actually made my eyebrows shoot up." "When?" 3 weeks ago, the morning after she posted that confession video. I packed my bags and walked out. He ran a wet hand through his hair, looking absolutely wrecked. "Mom, I swear to God, I did not know. I didn't know she scammed all those women online. I didn't know the whole thing was a calculated hit job from day one." "You knew enough," I fired back, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You knew my brain was perfectly fine. You watched me recite my social security number and bank balances from memory in front of a judge. You saw me rattle off numbers that a healthy 20-year-old could not remember. And you still sat there and tried to strip my rights away. Because I am weak," he suddenly shouted, his voice breaking into a sob. "Because I have always been a weak piece of garbage. I always need someone to steer the ship for me. First I leaned on you, and then I leaned on her. And I picked the wrong damn person to trust." "You did not just pick her," I corrected him sharply. "You picked her over me. Do you understand the difference?" He completely collapsed. He slumped against the drywall and slid down to the floor, sitting in a puddle of his own rainwater, just like he did in the courthouse. "I lost you, didn't I? It doesn't matter how many checks I write or floors I sweep. I already lost my mother." I stood over him, this 42-year-old man weeping in my entryway like a toddler, and I felt absolutely nothing. The umbilical cord that tied my heart to his had been severed with a scalpel inside that courtroom. "You didn't lose me, Mason," I said quietly. "You threw me away years ago. When you stopped calling, when you forgot my birthdays, when you only showed up when your bank account was overdrawn. I didn't leave you. I just stopped waiting by the door. Is there anything I can do?" he begged, looking up at me with desperate, red eyes. "Anything at all to make you forgive me? Forgiveness is not something you beg for. It is something you earn. Go do your 6 months. Go help those widows because it is the right thing to do, not because a DA is holding a gun to your head. Learn what it takes to build a life without stealing someone else's. And maybe, in 20 years, when I am dead and gone, you will look back at this exact moment and finally realize what you threw in the trash." "Please don't say that," he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "God, Mom, please don't say that." "Why? Because it makes you feel guilty? Good. Guilt means your conscience isn't completely dead yet. Use it." I turned my back on him and walked into the kitchen. I poured my coffee into a mug. I took a slow sip, listening to my son weep in the hallway. When I was done, I walked back out. He was still sitting there, hugging his knees to his chest. "You can let yourself out," I said. He used the wall to push himself up. He dragged himself to the door. Hand on the knob, he stopped and looked over his shoulder. "Mom, those pictures you gave me in that envelope? I look at them every single morning, and it makes me sick. I hate myself for what I did to that little boy in the baseball uniform, for turning into this." "Good," I said without flinching. "Hating who you are is step 1 of becoming someone else." And I shut the door in his face. Chloe showed up 2 days later, holding a bouquet of yellow roses. My supposed favorites. Except I had never once told her I liked yellow roses. She probably just grabbed the first bundle she saw at the grocery store checkout line. "Mom," she whispered when I opened the door, "can we please talk?" I stepped aside. I took the roses and dropped them into a dry glass vase on the counter. A tiny, petty move, but entirely intentional. She stared at the empty vase and chewed on her lip. "I am starting at the foundation on Tuesday," she said, keeping her eyes on the floor. "Me and Mason. 6 months, I am aware. Marcus Thorne keeps me in the loop. Mom, Tiffany got into my head. She made me believe that." "Stop right there," I snapped, holding up a finger. "Do not insult my intelligence with cheap excuses. Tiffany is a sociopath, yes, but you are a 39-year-old woman. You made a choice. You signed legal affidavits. You tried to perjure yourself to steal my money." Her eyes welled up instantly. "I was drowning, Mom. The credit card companies were calling my office every day. They were threatening to garnish my wages." I panicked. "And when Tiffany said you were sitting on millions, you thought you could just skim off the top without me noticing? You thought you could just declare your own mother brain dead to solve your shopping addiction?" "No, she choked on a sob. "I wanted to believe you were actually sick, because Tiffany had those videos, and that doctor. It made it easier to swallow. And not once did you pick up the phone and call me. Not once did you drive over here, look me in the eye, and ask, 'Mom, are you okay?' Because if you had actually cared enough to ask, I would have told you the truth." Chloe collapsed onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. "Because I knew. Deep down, I knew you were fine. But the lie was the easiest way out. It was a magic eraser for all my debts." Well, at least she was finally telling the ugly truth. That counted for something. "You want to know what the real tragedy is here, Chloe?" I asked, sitting down in the armchair across from her. "If you had just driven over here 2 years ago, sat on that couch, and said, 'Mom, I am in deep trouble. I owe $75,000 and I am terrified.' Do you know what I would have done? I would have helped you." Chloe looked up, mascara running down her cheeks, her eyes wide with shock. "Really? You are my daughter. Of course I would have. I wouldn't have just handed you a blank check, because you need to learn how to balance a checkbook. But I would have set up a zero-interest payment plan. I would have paid for a financial advisor. I would have actually been a mother to you. But you chose the coward's way out. You tried to rob me in a courtroom instead of asking for my help in my living room." "It wasn't a robbery," she whispered defensively. "Oh, really? Forging medical records to hijack my bank accounts. What exactly do you call it?" She shut her mouth. She had zero defense. I reached under the coffee table and pulled out a thick blue binder. I tossed it onto the glass table. It hit with a heavy thud. "That is a debt restructuring plan. I paid my CPA $2,000 to draft it. If you follow every single rule in that binder, cut up your credit cards, and live on a strict budget, you will be debt-free in 36 months. Without declaring bankruptcy. Without ruining your credit score." She reached out and touched the binder like it was radioactive. Her hands were shaking. "Why? Why would you do this for me after what I tried to do to you?" "Because I am still a mother," I said, my voice finally softening just a fraction. "And mothers don't abandon their kids in the dirt, even when their kids leave them to die." She absolutely lost it. Ugly, guttural crying, snot running down her nose, her shoulders heaving. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I was such a selfish, stupid bitch, and—" "Yes, you were," I agreed, offering zero comfort. "But you can change. If you actually want to put the work in, that part is entirely up to you." Tiffany never showed up at my door, but she did post the video. It went live on a Tuesday afternoon. No ring light, no beauty filters. Bare face, staring blankly into the camera lens, reading a scripted apology off a piece of paper off screen. "My name is Tiffany Davis. I lied about the mental health of my mother-in-law, Eleanor Davis. I manipulated video evidence. I bribed a neighbor for false testimony. I launched a GoFundMe under fraudulent pretenses. I also scammed 8 older women out of $143,000 through my coaching business. I take full accountability, and I apologize to my victims." The video was 120 seconds long. It racked up 50,000 views in 3 days. The comment section was an absolute bloodbath. She lost 15,000 followers overnight. Every single one of her brand sponsorships dropped her instantly. Her entire digital empire burned to the ground in less than 48 hours. I didn't feel an ounce of pity. I just felt like the universe had finally balanced the scales. 6 months later, I got the final compliance report from the foundation director. Mason kept his head down. He swept floors. He set up folding chairs. He sat with grieving widows and helped them navigate small business loan applications. One of the women left a note in the suggestion box. Mr. Davis helped me file the LLC paperwork for my bakery. He treated me with so much respect. He made me feel like my life wasn't over. Chloe taught personal finance workshops on Tuesday nights. She used her own catastrophic credit card debt as a cautionary tale. Another woman wrote, "Chloe taught me that it is never too late to learn how to budget. I opened my first savings account today at 55 years old. They had changed. Maybe not entirely. Maybe they would never be the people they could have been if greed hadn't poisoned them, but they learned something real. Did I forgive them? I don't know. Did I start seeing them again? Sometimes. At holidays, birthdays. Always polite, always keeping a firm, emotional distance. Did we ever rebuild the family we used to be? No, because that family was a mirage. It was a one-sided mother's love that they took for granted until it was gone, but it didn't hurt anymore. The agonizing grief had slowly calcified into indifference. And honestly, indifference is incredibly peaceful. Today is my birthday. I am 70 years old. I am standing at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Arthur Davis Center for Women's Entrepreneurship. I named it after my husband, because he would have been damn proud of this. Proud of me. The center has 6 smart classrooms, a massive library, a commercial test kitchen for culinary startups, and a state-of-the-art computer lab. Every single brick paid for by the trust fund I set up. $3,500,000 put to incredibly good use. There are 200 women standing in this courtyard today. Widows, divorcees, women who were left with nothing. Women society wrote off as irrelevant the second they got a few gray hairs. Women who are about to realize that it is never, ever too late to build an empire. I walk up to the wooden podium. My hair is pure silver now, pinned back elegantly. I am wearing an emerald green silk dress I bought for myself. Comfortable flats, because I am done wearing heels to impress people who don't matter. Good morning, I say. My voice booms across the courtyard without even needing the microphone. 70 years old and my lungs are still iron. My name is Eleanor Davis, and I want to tell you a story. I tell them everything. Well, almost everything. The story of a 53-year-old widow. Terrified. Alone. A woman who refused to roll over and die. A woman who built boutiques, bought commercial real estate, and learned how to invest. Not because she wanted to buy a yacht, but because she wanted to buy her freedom. People tried to take a lot of things from me in this life, I say, scanning the crowd of rapt faces. My husband, my youth, almost my sanity. But nobody, no matter how hard they tried, could ever take away what I built with my own 2 hands and my own sheer will. The courtyard erupts into applause. I see women wiping tears from their eyes. An older woman in the front row, maybe 75 years old, tentatively raises her hand. Mrs. Davis, do you have any regrets? Do you regret cutting your children off financially? Do you ever think you were too harsh? The question hits me like a gust of wind. The entire crowd goes dead silent, waiting for my answer. I have regrets, I say, speaking directly from my soul. I regret not setting hard boundaries decades ago. I regret believing that being a good mother meant giving my kids everything on a silver platter instead of teaching them how to work for it. I regret thinking that unconditional love meant setting myself on fire just to keep them warm. I take a long pause, letting the words hang in the crisp air. But I do not regret fighting back, not for 1 second. Because if a woman like me with money, resources, and a shark of a lawyer won't stand up to elder abuse, what kind of chance do the women who have nothing stand? The applause is deafening this time. It shakes the pavement. After the ceremony wraps up, I take a slow walk through the facility. Mason is here. I sent him an invite. He is in the computer lab, sweating through his shirt, wiring the Ethernet cables for the new desktops. He looks up and sees me in the doorway. He gives me a small, respectful nod. I nod back. It is not love. It is not total forgiveness. It is an acceptance of what happened, and a mutual understanding that the past is dead and buried. Chloe is down the hall. She is organizing tax prep folders in the finance library. She catches my eye. She offers a hesitant, fragile smile. I give her a tight smile back. Baby steps. Maybe in 5 years we can share a cup of coffee. Maybe we won't. Either way, I will be fine. Tiffany is nowhere to be found. Last I heard, she moved to Las Vegas after the divorce was finalized, trying to rebrand herself in a city that doesn't care about your past. I wish her luck, but I don't waste more than 2 seconds thinking about her. Some people are just heavy luggage you need to leave at the airport. That night, sitting in my condo, I open the cedar chest one last time. I pull out Arthur's flannel shirt. It doesn't smell like anything anymore. Just fabric. I look at the yellowed photographs. I trace the gold rim of the wedding band I took off years ago. I did it, Arthur. I whisper into the quiet room. I survived. More than survived. I thrived. I close the lid of the cedar chest. I slide it into the back of the closet. It is time to let it go. It is time to let a lot of things go. Walking back into the kitchen, I spot a folded piece of notebook paper on the counter. I recognize the handwriting immediately. Chloe's loopy cursive. I unfold it. Mom, I am not writing this expecting you to forgive me. I just need you to know that the woman who destroyed that courtroom wasn't the mom I grew up with. She was a titan. She was fierce and brilliant and terrifying. I realized in that courtroom that I never actually knew you. I only knew the version of you that served my needs. The mom who cooked the pot roasts, did my laundry, and wrote the checks. I want to get to know Eleanor, the businesswoman, the survivor, the titan. If you ever decide to leave the door cracked open for me, I promise I will walk through it with respect. Your daughter, who is trying every day to be a better human being, Chloe. I read the letter 3 times. Then I fold it up, walk back to the closet, and slip it into the cedar chest, right next to the photos of Mason and Chloe from when they were innocent kids. Because even though the past is full of pain, it still matters. It is the dirt that grew the woman I am today. I walk into the bathroom and flick on the harsh vanity lights. I stare at my 70-year-old face in the mirror, deep crow's feet carved around my eyes, skin that sags no matter how much expensive moisturizer I buy, sunspots dotting my hands. But I also see something else. Eyes that are sharp, alert, alive, a posture made of iron, a smile that doesn't require a single ounce of validation from anyone else on the planet. I see a woman who lost some excruciating battles, but absolutely dominated the war. The war against society's expectations. The war against the narrative that older women are invisible and disposable. The war against the toxic lie that a mother's love requires her to completely destroy herself. Hello, Eleanor, I say to my reflection. It is really damn nice to finally meet you. And for the first time in 70 years, I feel entirely, perfectly complete. Final reflection. Because true wealth isn't measured by the numbers in your Vanguard account, but by the dignity you refuse to let anyone strip away from you. It is not about how many millions you stash away. It is about how much respect you demand when you walk into a room. It is not about how many children you gave birth to. It is about never letting them treat you like a doormat. Women of my generation were brainwashed into believing we had to pour from an empty cup, that we had to serve until we vanished into the wallpaper, that we had to love our families until it literally killed us. But some of us figure out before they put us in the ground that we can still be devoted mothers, loyal wives, and loving grandmothers without erasing our own identities. We learn that saying no is not a selfish act. It is a survival tactic. We learn that drawing a hard boundary is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of radical self-love. And we learn that it is never, ever too late to rise from the ashes of a burned-down life and fly higher than the vultures who placed bets on our downfall. I lost my children in that Chicago courtroom. But I found myself, and if they ever manage to truly find their way back to me, they won't be coming home to the pushover mom they used to manipulate. They are going to have to deal with the woman I was born to be, unbreakable. If this story resonated with you, if you saw flashes of your own mother, your grandmother, or even your own reflection in this journey, Please know that you are not walking this path alone. Drop a comment below and tell me what city or state you are listening from. Smash that like button if you believe older women deserve absolute respect. And hit subscribe for more raw, real-life stories about resilience, dignity, and fighting back against the odds. Because as long as there is one woman left standing who is ready to roar, there is always hope. The end.